Eala exits first round of Australian Open after falling to Parks. This time, the star's run ended early. Filipina tennis star Alex Eala bowed out in the opening round of the Australian Open after falling to American Alicia Parks, 6-0, 3-6, 2-6, at the Melbourne Park on January 18th. Eala started strong in the first set, breaking Parks' serve 3 times while committing less errors to close the set in just over 20 minutes. However, momentum shifted as Parks gained her composure and began pushing the ball deeper into the court. The Filipina star led 0-3, but Parks caught up in the second set. The rally was short-lived, as Eala suffered from unforced errors and allowed Parks to retake the control and add a tiebreaker set. The third set began shaky for both contenders, going back and forth for 5 games before Parks ultimately sealed the win. Despite the loss, Eala bagged a $150,000 or around 5.9 million Cuban pesos for appearing in the first round. Upvid. The Australian Open has a way of revealing truths early. Before the second week's glamour, before the names are etched into headlines and history, the first round stands like a gatekeeper, unforgiving, brilliant, and honest. It was there, under the fierce Melbourne sun, that Alexandra Eala's journey ended sooner than she hoped, her path cut short by Alicia Parks. The scoreboard told one story. The match itself told many more. Eala walked onto the court carrying something heavier than her racket. She carried expectation, her own, her country's, and that peculiar global curiosity reserved for young players who seemed to arrive already wrapped in promise. The Australian Open crowd, scattered but attentive, knew they were watching a beginning, even if they did not know how it would end. Across the net stood Parks, power personified, her game built like a thunderstorm, sudden, loud, and decisive. From the first ball, the contrast was clear. Parks' serve cracked through the air like drywood snapping in heat, while Eala's strokes traced cleaner, quieter arcs, measured, thoughtful, searching for angles rather than explosions. Tennis, after all, is not merely a contest of strength. It is a conversation, sometimes an argument, sometimes a negotiation. That morning, the language spoken most fluently was power. Eala fought with what she had always relied on: timing, intelligence, and an almost stubborn belief in construction. She moved well, absorbed pace, redirected shots, and refused to rush. There were moments, beautiful, fleeting moments, when she bent the rally to her will, drawing Parks forward, teasing her wide, forcing an error that earned a soft murmur of appreciation from the stands. In those moments, you could see the future flicker. But first rounds are ruthless. They do not wait for potential to ripen. Parks imposed herself steadily, leaning into her serve and forehand, shortening points, denying Eala the time she needed to weave her patterns. Each game felt like a small siege. Eala defended bravely, saving breakpoints with courage and creativity. But pressure has a way of accumulating. Eventually, something gives, not dramatically, but quietly, like scent slipping through fingers. As the match wore on, the heat seemed to thicken. Melbourne in January does not simply warm the skin, it tests resolve. Sweat darkened shirts, towels were used more frequently, and breaths between points grew longer. In those pauses, Eala stared at her strings, at the baseline, at nothing in particular, perhaps searching for clarity, perhaps already learning. When the final point arrived, it was not cruel. There was no collapse, no racket thrown, no visible despair. Just a rally that ended with Parks' shot finding its mark and Eala's shoulders dropping by a fraction of an inch. The handshake at the net was firm, respectful, and brief. One player moved on. The other turned toward her chair, her tournament done before it had truly begun. Loss in the first round is a strange thing. It lacks the drama of a final and the romance of a deep run, yet it can be the most instructive. There is no cushion of success to soften it. It arrives raw and unfiltered, demanding reflection. For Eala, this defeat was not a verdict, it was a mirror. She had earned her place on that court. That alone mattered. Not long ago, stages like the Australian Open were dreams glimpsed through screens. Now they are workplaces, arenas where belief must become habit. Falling to Parks was not a failure of ambition but a lesson in scale. The gap between promise and consistency is narrow, but it is real. The crowd filtered out, already thinking of the next match, the next storyline. Tennis moves quickly, it always has. Yet somewhere beyond the noise, Eala packed her bag knowing more than she had known hours earlier. She had felt the pace, the weight of expectation, the cost of small lapses against big hitters. These are lessons that do not appear in practice sessions or junior tournaments. They arrive only here, under the sun, under the lights, under pressure. Great careers are rarely built on early triumphs alone. They are shaped by mornings like this, by losses that sting just enough to be remembered. If victories tell players who they are, defeats tell them who they must become. Eala's exit from the Australian Open will be recorded as a statistic. First round, straight sets, opponent advancing. But numbers are poor historians of growth. What they cannot capture is the quiet resilience forged in defeat, the recalibration of goals, the sharpening of hunger. They cannot measure how a young player absorbs a loss and turns it into fuel. As the tournament marched on, champions would rise, narratives would bloom, and the world's attention would shift. Yet somewhere, far from center court, Eala would be training again, running drills, refining returns, imagining rematches that do not yet exist. The Australian Open had said not yet. It had not said never.